Level Up is a regular podcast that brings you topics to help you perform at work and in life at your very highest level. Your host is Dan Kyoto, an executive coach, corporate trainer, and author. He is president of Impact Training and Executive Coaching. And now, here's Dan.
Thank you very much, Jesse. As always, I appreciate that. We bring you a diversity of topics at Level Up. You know, Level Up is your link to lifelong learning. And we're going to be learning today. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about generations. And we're going to meet someone from the millennial generation. But first, I want to talk a little bit about that topic because right now in the workplace, we have 5 different generations. We have traditionalists, we have baby boomers, we have Gen X, and we have millennial, and now Gen Z is coming too. And so I like to look at different generations and appreciate them. In fact, Express Professional Services has a great video, and this video talks about different generations, but what they do is approach it in a great way. They talk about what great things each generation brings. So you're not looking at anything we don't like about a generation. Now, you may have heard some people, hopefully you're not one, but sometimes we'll hear things about generations like the millennials. We might hear, well, they don't have the respect that we always have. They don't work as hard as we've always worked. And I'm here to tell you that I know some of these folks, and I find the opposite to be true. So we'll be looking at that today. My guest is actually on the cusp of Gen X and the millennial generation. So let me introduce you to him. He hails from Tulsa, Oklahoma. He moved to Joplin, Missouri for, and you're going to love this, college/golf. So that means both of those things were very important to him, and for good reason. He received a degree in international business. So that is his field. And this just in, he retired as a local legend in the beer pong community. So I will tell you that part too. He has diversified employment as he was going to college and high school. He has actually worked in the bank and trust field. He has worked at a company which is heating and air motor type company, and in retail. Actually, that one was TJ Maxx. And then also Shangri-La Golf Resort. So all of these things that he's done. I will tell you a little bit about the golf part. He is a 2019 Ozark Amateur Champion. He is the 2016 Southern Bancorp Invitation Champion. And also, he's never missed qualifying for any of the teams in 45 tournaments. His current handicap is 4.4. So my guest is Taylor Lansford, and he is the National Account Manager of Sidecars Incorporated, which is a reinsurance organization located in the Midwest. So welcome, Taylor.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. That was a heck of an introduction.
Well, I tried to get everything in that I could. Hey, it's pretty impressive. In fact, it's very impressive.
Thank you.
And we will pick different parts of that to talk about along the way. I wanted to talk to you about your career now and also golf. We'll talk golf, but we'll do your career first because I know people like you and golf, or if we start that topic, we won't get off that topic. So let's start with your career. And I want to ask you, what was the transition like from college to a corporation? Talk about that a little bit.
It was an interesting transition. It wasn't something that I at the time, I don't believe that I was particularly prepared for. It was an adjustment coming from that the college lifestyle of waking up, had a couple hours of class in the mornings. Those are the things you don't necessarily enjoy doing as a student athlete compared to the rest of your day, and then After that, it's quick meal, lunch of some kind, and then off to the golf course for a lot of practice or qualifiers and that kind of stuff. So after those first couple hours of class, it's the rest of your day is all the things that you love doing. Playing golf, and hang out with your friends, and the beer pong stuff, and and then when you transition into being a professional, it's you got a lot of. In college, it was I was doing things for myself. That was something that I wanted to do. That was me being driven to get the degree, internally on my own and at my own expectations and responsibilities. Whereas, you get into a professional field, you're reporting to other people, and dealing with, your bosses and other coworkers as well. There's a lot of expectation on you and responsibility to be there. So that kind of transition was a little bit of a different one, but it wasn't completely undoable, or it was interesting. That's just,
and two, I think a lot of us, when we get into the corporate field, we start to think about college and think, gosh, I wish I would have taken more advantage of that, because as you describe college life, you do have time. You have time to do what you want to do. And then all of a sudden you're thrust into the corporate atmosphere. As you were working toward that degree, which is very impressive, the international business degree, did you find yourself toward the end kind of chomping at the bit to get out there and get doing something in corporate life?
I think so. I certainly was. I was, like you said, it's people look back on it fondly, but yeah, at the end, it was, I was ready to take a new step and go a new direction in life, and start spending my time doing different things and getting into the corporate world and just getting my career started. And that's the future of your life after college. So few collegiate athletes go on to play professionally in their sport. So the vast majority of everybody goes into a career outside of athletics. So yeah, I was very excited for what that looked like, what kind of opportunities were out there, and starting to get my foot in the door and get everything rolling.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say was the biggest shock coming from the collegiate life to the corporate life? What was the biggest shock?
So I think the biggest shock, sort of more something that was tougher for me, was how that the competitiveness of playing college golf and those kinds of things was immediately gone. Yeah, that wasn't what I did anymore. I still play golf fairly frequently, but it wasn't constantly competing against my teammates, and it wasn't playing tournaments as well. So coming from that into a professional, career field, I had to try to find something where that competitive nature for golf was very natural for me, and it was just always there. So I had to find something that drove me, and that sparked that competitive desire inside of myself to have something to really want to get up for every day and get going. So
yeah.
When that kind of, from going from that life to the professional life, when that kind of disappeared off the table, that was a very, very tough feeling for me to get over, and to accept and understand what should slide into that feeling's place to fill that gap.
Yes. And yet, as you're in the corporate life, I am hearing that you're doing really well integrating into that. So you talk about the competition. What does competition look like when you're now in the corporate life? And it's not like you're really competing with the people around you, but where is the competition? Is it with yourself? Where is it?
It's everywhere, really. It is a little bit with the people around you, in a different fashion. You're not, competing for a score or a direct, competitive prize over your peers or everything, but it's a competitive place, and it should be. I mean, that's what breeds the best out of everyone. having competition, having challenges, I think. So finding competition in coworkers, wanting to stand out, wanting to be the best, competition amongst other people in the industry, competition amongst my friends, wanting to feel like I'm a successful individual and to take advantage of the opportunities that I've built for myself through college.
Mhm. I like that. I like that. We weren't going to talk about golf yet. However, um, tell me, you were also captain of your team. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, for 2 years, my
Okay.
last 2 years.
And so, what did you have to do in that role?
Um, it was a little bit kind of similar to the role I'm in now at Sidecars, where it was a little bit of an intermediary between guys on the team and the coach. They certainly, communicated to each other as well. But if there was something that a player didn't want to talk to the coach about, that was my role. If there was, something coach had noticed that he felt would be better conveyed via somebody that's more of a teammate or a friend rather than from a coach to the player, then he would use me in that way to help with things like that. But also, took it upon myself to get to know the guys on the team at a higher level than I feel like I would have, and that other people did if I wasn't the captain of the team. So getting to know them, and then also, of course, helping guys out with the physical ability as well. I mean, trying to point things out in their swings to help them out. Things that I noticed that it's very hard as yourself playing to notice things about your game when having somebody else's eyes on it is something very helpful. So I'm also contributing there as well.
So, being a team captain, is there any kind of book about doing that? Or is that something that you had to listen to your coach about how you do this? How did you handle that? What's the training?
Sure. I didn't get a whole lot of training. I didn't read any books about it at the time. That was my first real role into any sort of captain, leader, management-esque type of role. So it was a big learning experience for me. It was a role I was very comfortable in. It being for it to be my first time in that kind of role, it was very comfortable for me because of the background of the general nature of what it was, and being on a golf team surrounded by guys that I already knew. So as far as training, it was just there was some one-on-one meetings with coach, what he'd like to see from his captain, and how I could help the team be the best that it could.
That's great. If you think about it, your role at Sidecars now as a national account manager, it's changed from what it was. So what I want to ask you is, when you first worked for the organization, you were one of the team members, and you still are, work with this group. And then all of a sudden, you're asked to have a management position there. Did you see that coming? Did you feel like that was coming in terms of the jobs you were doing and how you were learning all that?
Sure. Yeah. I know. I mean, I guess leading up immediately before it, it wasn't like I knew that was the role that was on the horizon for me. When I say sure, I mean it in like that I'd seen it with other people, and that this company certainly presents you the opportunities to climb as high as you want to climb. Whatever you're capable of, the opportunity is there, and you just got to go grab it. So I knew that taking it upon myself to get better at what I do, to understand what we do, to educate myself on everything that we do as a company, was an opportunity that was right there in front of me to grab, and therefore, be pushed further into that kind of role. I think it's a company that really, from that perspective, frees you up to take on whatever you would like to take on, and just gives you that opportunity. If you want it, it's there and it's available. And I think I was able to be able to handle everything that was given to me, thrive in it, and show that I was able was capable of doing whatever was necessary.
That's really interesting. I think sometimes those opportunities are there for us and we don't always grab them and make something happen with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you did. So I think that's good. And also, as an executive coach, I find that a lot of people don't know, many people, let's say that, many people don't know how good they are. So we move from day to day doing what we do, not realizing that we're getting better and better at that. And as you say, the more you learn about the company, and I respect that because your organization is one that's very intricate and detailed, and it has to be done very precisely. So as you learn all that, it's so nice to also see that there are opportunities that you can have the position you want and be working with others to help them grow, help them get to where they want to be. Right. So yeah. I think that's very good. Also, we have had your CEO, Garen McMillan, on this podcast several times, and he is the ultimate lifelong learner. He's always reading a book. He's always talking about a new book. Different things, and sometimes we discuss his perspective on some of those books. So that makes me think that a lot that happens within your organization involves change. Am I right on that?
Certainly. Yeah. You nailed that spot on. He is virtually a master at self-education and taking it upon himself to learn more. And therefore, there is a plenty of change in our organization. It is constantly changing, whether that's what you would expect between new programs and new agents, new dealers, everything that we're working on. And then also it changes a lot internally with our processes, with constantly finding new ways to do everything that we do in a better way.
Yeah, I like that. A better way.
Mm-hmm.
That is good. In a recent podcast before this one, we had Dave Woods, and the title of that podcast was Being a Change Agent, being successful at change. And change agents love change. They just say, bring it on. They like what they see. So be candid. How are you with change? Do you look at it in a healthy way, or does it scare you sometimes?
No, I love change. I believe in change. I think that change should happen for a very positive reason. You found something better than what you had previously. You found a better process. You're working with a better vendor, a better company, better employees, whatever it is. It's the reason for something changing. It should never be changing for the worse. And so I think that embracing change means that you're taking steps to get better. It's you're 1% better every day, and I think even more so in the world that we live in now. It's just the further we advance, the more important change is, because your markets and your audience changes so much, so frequently, that if you as a company aren't inclined to change, you're going to get left behind. There's going to be other companies that come in that are willing to change, and they're going to scoop up your business. So I think that, change is absolutely critical, and I'm very welcoming of it. I'm happy to change processes, change, who we're working with. If we find a company that performs something for us better than the previous one, then I'm happy to make that switch.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I think you bring up another good point, this changing companies. We all have vendors that we use, and sometimes we get very complacent and we think we always have to work with that vendor. And then there's something else out there, someone better, someone who can do more for us. So you always have to be analyzing that to make sure that you're using the right vendors too.
those vendors should be assessing themselves and changing too. That's if we're switching from vendor A to vendor B because vendor B is better, that company should also, or company A should assess what changes they need to make so they can be more competitive and better for their their clients as well. So it's changes all encompassing of everybody out there.
It's been kind of a crazy world with COVID last year, all of that happening. It's made companies look at everything. Some of them had to change immediately in how they were doing things, maybe learn new ways to do things. But I think it also makes us look at how we do what we do. And in some cases, even audiences change. The clients that we had, we may be serving them and some new clients too. So being able to change, I think, is just a great thing.
Yeah, got to.
Let's take a break at this point. This is Dan Chiodo. My guest today is Taylor Lansford, and we're talking about generations. So as I said, we're talking to a gentleman who is on the cusp of Gen X and Millennial, and we're talking about moving from the college life to the corporate life too. And we will be right back after a word from our sponsor. And yes, this is Level Up.
Here is F45 Training. The F stands for functional training, a mix of circuit and HIIT style workouts geared towards everyday movement. 45 is the total amount of time for sweat dripping and heart pumping fun. With thousands of exercises in our database and an almost infinite amount of combinations, our sessions are always fresh and innovative. Put that all together, and F45 Training is here to bring you one of the world's most innovative workouts. Now let's take a class. Find your local F45 studio from our locations all around the globe. Once inside, our trainers will be there to greet you and check you in. First, we'll demo each exercise while you watch from the blue track. A warm-up will follow, then it's time to find your station. Want to play-by-play? Track your heart rate with F45 Lionheart. Ready in 3, 2, 1, it's go time. F45 TV will guide you. F45 FM will move you. And our trainers will support you every step of the way. This is team training. This is life-changing. This is F45.
Thank you for coming back to part 2 of Level Up. This is Dan Chiodo, your host, and my guest today is Taylor Lansford, and we are talking about the college life and the corporate life, and we're also talking a little bit about golf. It all seems to intertwine. It all seems to really be similar in certain ways. Taylor, I'd like to start this side with golf. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Just for a little bit. So how did you, we talked a little bit about your corporate career and college and all of that. How did you get interested in golf?
I got interested in golf through my grandfather. He lives down in Florida. I went and visited him one time. I believe it was the summer before my 8th grade year, which is quite late to be getting into golf. Realistically, most people I know that I played against or played with on teams in high school or in college were they started much younger than that. A lot of them, a lot of people start playing right when they start walking. The guys that end up playing in college and those kinds of things. So I was a late bloomer, but I was a fairly athletic individual, so I was able to pick it up. But I went down one summer to spend some time with my grandpa in Florida, and he was like, you know what, I think you would like to play golf. And I was like, well, I'll certainly give it a try. And then we went out. It was kind of fun. Wasn't very good at it then. And played a couple times while I was down there. And then throughout that school year, I played here and there and thought about it. And I had been in sports growing up, played soccer, basketball. And then that 8th grade year was the first year that I didn't do any athletic activities. So I was kind of looking for something. And by the end of that year, I was like, I'm ready to get back into sports. So there at the end of the 8th grade year, I took a couple lessons in Tulsa and decided to join the team the next year, and spent my 9th grade year playing JV and then kind of moved up from there.
That's great. Well, even though you didn't start you say early enough. I've always heard that if you're very athletic, if you play other sports, it might be easier to play golf. And I guess the other thing I want to ask you is, as you have learned the game, I've told you this before, but you're such a gentleman. And there's something about golfers that some of the ones who can really make it seem to be so controlled and have good emotional intelligence. And but are you always like that, or am I just seeing that side of you?
It is. I can be. I like to be that way on the golf course, but it does tend to come out of me to be a little less stoic and a little less, self-controlled on the golf course sometimes, especially when I was younger. I've learned more now about how to control that. And, it's funny, yourself or Garen that you had mentioned, other people that I work with, they probably wouldn't recognize me as a person on the golf course because I can get so fired up. But outside of playing golf in my life, I stay very calm, cool, and collected. But on the golf course, I think having that within me certainly helps. But then I am an extremely competitive person. I have very high expectations of myself. So I can get pretty fired up. I can get angry. I can get excited. But that fuels me. I've had talks with coaches in the past about how fiery I can be on the course, getting angry, working on controlling that, and those kinds of things. As they have those conversations with most people, a lot of golfers, it's an emotional sport. People get mad, people get excited, but working on keeping your highs a little bit lower and your lows a little bit higher is always very helpful. So, but I've had several people that I played with on my team in college specifically. They would point out to me that they're like, Taylor, when you get mad on the course, it makes you better. It seems to make you better. You find something in there. Mm-hmm. I know when I see you get mad that you're probably going to birdie the next hole. And so that wasn't necessarily something I noticed in myself, but perhaps the reason that I didn't completely axe that out of my game was because it, under the surface, it did fire me up and get me going and helped me kind of get everything pointed back in the right direction. So I found it to be helpful, but it is a fine line you got to walk. You learn when to control it, when to rein it back in. You do have to have a lot of control over your emotions, be able to let them flow out when you need them to, rein it back in when you need to as well. And then that's much easier said than done, given that it's an emotional reaction.
Well, if you were a person listening to Level Up and you tuned in right now, just when you said what you said the past few minutes, you wouldn't know if we were talking about golf or about the workplace. Yep. Because it's the same thing, isn't it? You have to work on those things so that you can have some control, or the coach may pull you aside and say, handle that a little bit. So you find some of those messages that your coaches have given you help. Is that what you're saying? And that,
definitely.
Yeah. And nothing wrong with being competitive too. I think that's a wonderful thing also. So that you're going to be you're going to have a good game. You're going to be a good golfer. You want to be great. You're very competitive, as you say. What does nervousness look like for you? Do you get nervous when you step up, when you tee up?
I usually don't. There have been a couple of instances in my life where I have gotten nervous in a tournament setting. But honestly, it's probably only been 2 or 3 times, and there wasn't really any consistency to those as far as why I got nervous, the types of courses I was playing, the type of event. It was just, and it was very brief. It passes. I get excited, which internally can sort of feel in some ways, butterflies in the stomach, kind of heart rate is up. You feel kind of some adrenaline. It can feel pretty similar in those ways, but it was always excited to me because it was a chance to compete. There's pressure on everything going on, and those kinds of things get me excited. And I think that honestly was very beneficial for me in golf to handle situations that would make a lot of people nervous, where they would make me excited to play and excited for the opportunity. It was it was helpful for me. It helped me perform better, especially under pressure.
That's great. That shows that you're meant for the game when you feel that way. It's not really nervousness, it's eagerness. In fact, sometimes we use the term, I'm so anxious to go on vacation. And no, I don't think you're anxious. That means anxiety. Don't you mean eager? Oh, yeah, because I'm looking forward to it. So I think whenever we can be eager about something, turn even butterflies into eagerness, that's something we ought to think about. I think that's very good. So then, of course, you get the rewards for, in the beginning of the show, we talked about some of the things you've achieved. And so I'm sure there's much more you'll be able to do. So how many tournaments do you play a year?
Well, now it's a lot less. I still love playing tournament golf. It's my favorite way to play golf still. There's a few different levels of just going out after work, playing 9 holes in the evening with a buddy, going out, having a weekend with some of my college buddies on the course. And, it's lighthearted, but there's money on the line. We were playing for something, and we like to bet with each other. And then you get into competitive golf and tournaments. And then there's also different levels within that as well, as far as, your competition you're playing against, whether it's local, regional, national, amateur stuff. So, I love playing. It gets me excited. It's something it makes practicing fun. It makes those, 2 hours I get to go to the course after work even more fun, because I'm working towards something that truly means something to me, and it's performing well when it matters. So yeah, I love competition and getting to play. And I don't get to play as many now as I used to. I play more team events now, 3 people, on a team kind of event, playing a scramble with each other, best ball events, those kinds of things. I play a little bit more of those now, but I do still get into 4 or 5 individual stroke play tournaments a year, which is what a lot of people are familiar with for collegiate golfers or professional golfers.
Okay, so that gives us an idea of how involved you are still with golf. I'd like to take us down another road now, and that is, recently you and I had a conversation about time management. Now, looking at generations, a lot of traditionalists and baby boomers talk about how many hours they work, and they don't take time for things in their personal life necessarily. Some do, but a lot of them have talked about living for work. And if you look at millennials and Gen X, it's different. They want a work-life balance. So do you think that, well, let's see if you agree with that, the work-life balance concept. What do you think?
Oh, certainly. I think that that you should find all the things you love to do. For me, that's playing golf, spending time with my friends. People have all sorts of different hobbies, and then matching that up with a career that you genuinely enjoy and look forward to, and then that allows you to align those things in your life. I think that, creating time every day, you don't need to do all of those things every day, but creating time in your day for a couple different aspects and finding yourself a role that allows for that. I've been very fortunate with Sidecars to work for a company that is flexible on hours worked, remote work, those kinds of things, so that I can still do things like playing golf and playing tournaments and all that.
Well, I have a theory, because I may not be a millennial. I am not a millennial. I'm not a Gen X, but I still feel that your personal time is so important, and your hobbies and the things that really thrill you. And so do you feel that and you can take golf for you. But do you feel that having that thing you do outside work helps you to be more efficient at the work that you do so that you get that done and can enjoy some of the personal things?
Certainly. Yeah, it helps on a lot of different levels. It's a mental escape from it. It's also, a golf course is a sanctuary of thought. Really, it's a great place to be away from. You can be away from other people if you want. You can play with people if you prefer, but you can also play alone and have just as much fun and get some time to yourself to think. So to kind of reset, to focus on things maybe at work and to be able to think about those kinds of things, think through problems in a different environment, in a different setting, I think is very beneficial. Just to pump in new ideas, because you're not looking at the same computer screens, you're not looking out the same window. You're in a different place, and fresh ideas, I think, can flow in easier that way. So it certainly helps a lot from that perspective. And it can free up your day. It can, like you said, drive you to want to get your things done in an efficient manner. If work was all I did all day, every day, I would be less inclined to be efficient if I had, didn't have other things that I wanted to spend time doing. I think that my efficiency would drop. I would feel like I would be that person that feels like, wow, I spend all my time in the office only working.
Yes. Well, you're right. We don't realize it, but if we don't take breaks, if we don't take lunch, if we don't have something we do outside work and take our vacations, the work starts to expand to fill the time. In other words, we don't really need all that time to do the job, but we become part of the working tired. We're getting more tired and we don't realize it. However, if we have something to go do, it makes us, it energizes us, as you were talking about, just makes you feel like you want to come to work and makes it so much better. Also, it's when you pull away from the office that you sometimes have really creative ideas, things that really wouldn't have occurred to you if you were staring at a computer screen and sitting at a desk.
Certainly. Yeah. That's all those free flowing ideas and everything. It really allows that to come in when especially when you're distracted physically with something else as well. And so I personally love to walk when I play golf. That's playing competitively in high school and college. That's how it's done. And that's what I'm used to. I love the exercise. I love the pace that invites. I can play plenty fast enough, but I do like walking, and that gives you all the time in the world to think about anything that's on your mind. And I've worked through a lot of professional and personal conflicts, in my own head while walking down fairways of the golf course.
Boy, I'm glad you said that, Taylor. That's a whole other topic that is so good, but it bears mentioning just the fact that we need time to process things in our mind. We don't take time to whatever we need, the meditation, just thinking about our life, our work. And it's so important. And I'm glad to hear you say that you do that.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very valuable. I'm very appreciative of it. And there's so many aspects of golf that are very valuable to my life, and so many things I've been able to learn. I mean, it's priceless, really.
Yeah. I think we ought to all think about that too. What could we take from the hobbies we have and apply them to work, to the careers we have? And maybe it goes vice versa too. Some people that I've known have these creative outlets, and they've made them the best in their field. I know a plastic surgeon who was an excellent plastic surgeon. He's also a sculptor. I know a wonderful neurologist who is also a jazz pianist. I know another surgeon who is a great choir director. All these different things they do, these outlets they have, which seem unrelated, and yet they've needed that to really perform well.
Yeah. I think there's similarities in a lot of those in how their career and their hobbies, complement each other compared to mine as well. I mean, playing musical instruments, choir, sculpting, those are all things that are calming, I think, and peaceful, just like golf is. And it's their own personal sanctuary where they're coming from. Being a surgeon is a pretty high stress job. So having that on the flip side is something that can be used as that calming tool that, is very natural, it's productive, and it is a skill. It's something you can always work on and get better at. So it's got that in there as well.
I like that. Well, we'll make sure that we include in the show notes today just the thing that you said, which is probably a great point to end our episode today, to be thinking about our own self-reflection, taking time to make sure that, number one, we are having good, positive self-talk about all the things that we're doing that are really good. And then just thinking about things in general. For me here in Florida, it looks like this every day. And so the beach is a great place to think about that. And I often wonder on my beach walks, all these things that come up in my mind. And I'm thinking that would not have happened at a desk. So it's something I think we should all have.
Exactly.
Taylor, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this podcast.
Thank you.
You did great. You've represented your generation well. You've represented your industry well. You've represented your sport well. So thank you for doing that and giving us a lot to think about. It's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's been an honor. I've enjoyed it.
You're a great guest. Thank you. Hey, now that you've watched Level Up, please take a look at those show notes. Take a highlighter and highlight some of the things that Taylor has said that you want to think about. And then just pick that one thing that you would like to do to improve. Don't try to do too much. Come back another time and circle something else. And little by little, you get better and better. And you are able to see that this Level Up can be your link to lifelong learning. We will save you a front row seat at the next Level Up podcast. And now Dustin is ready to take us out.
If you feel like this information was valuable to you, Dan would love it if you'd click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, please leave a comment. Also, if you're a first-time subscriber, be sure to ring that bell to be notified about future episodes. To learn more about what Impact's training and development can do for you and your business, visit impactbydan.com, where you can find more information about executive coaching, corporate training, keynote speaking, and much more. Thanks so much for watching.